Hello everyone, Shinto Bean here, playing some more Warhammer 40k Tacticus, and in this video I want to do a critical review of this game. It's been about 2 weeks since I first installed it, and I played quite a bit the first few days, and then I'm just putting in a few minutes here and there every day since then, just to see where it goes. And for a lot of these new games, when they first come out, people will do some reviews, and the thing is, with a mobile game like this, which utilizes a lot of monetization, a review in the first day is probably not going to be the most accurate one, because it doesn't really give you an honest picture of the game. But now that I've played for a little bit, I want to talk about a few of the good things and a few of the bad things that I have noticed. These are my opinions, of course. Now, as for the good, I think the actual gameplay, the turn-based combat system, is quite well done, and there are a lot of interesting characters with cool abilities. On the downside, you do have to start off as the Ultramarines, as you do in many 40k games, and so if you are not a fan of the Space Marines, well, too bad. You're going to be playing as them a lot more than any other faction for a long time, because unlocking these other characters, it takes quite some time. You can unlock these first 3 Necrons pretty quickly after the first few days if you put in enough matches in the campaign. The battles themselves, they go very quickly. There are 3 game speeds in this game. The normal speed is already very fast. You can make it even faster, and then the fastest speed, they're moving so fast that you can't even tell what's going on. Now, being able to vary the game speed is nice, but it almost feels like they made it so fast because they sort of expected that people wouldn't have the time or patience to sit through a longer battle. Now, what I realized pretty quickly is that in the campaign, the first 30 or 40 missions go by very quickly. It's very fast-paced, but then pretty soon you'll find yourself up against some very powerful enemies. Like, the difficulty just skyrockets. And at that point, you'll get stuck, and you will not be able to progress any further without upgrading your characters, and that is a core mechanic of this game. So I kind of came into this game expecting that the focus would just be on the turn-based combat, but what is just as important, if not more important than that, is upgrading your characters, which you have to do by obtaining all of these different resources. So what this game turns into, pretty quickly, is more of a resource collection and management game, rather than simply just a combat game. So, if you're into that kind of stuff, that's great, but if not, I think I was a little disappointed by that, to be honest. I mean, it's pretty overwhelming. There's just so many different items that you have to collect, and in order to progress in the campaign, you have to play the other game modes. Now, there are a lot of other game modes here. We got Onslaught, where you're playing against a horde of enemies. You got the Salvage Run, where you're just blowing up items that appear on the map. You got the Guild Raids, where you work with your clan members to beat a big boss. You got the Arena, where you are playing against other players who very quickly become much more powerful than you. I find it funny that this Arena is the one mode in which you can play a lot of games in a row. Like these other modes, like Onslaught and Salvage Run, and the Guild Raid, you can only play like 1 or 2 games a day because there's like a 15-hour cooldown. But as for the Arena, you can play a lot more games there. You can get some good loot, but you're constantly seeing players who are much better than you, which I think sort of adds to the sort of incentive. It's like the game wants you to compare yourself to these other people so that you can, spend more money on the game or more time, which is required in order to progress. There's a time wall, essentially. You're limited in the number of games you can play each day, so progressing can take place over a very long amount of time, unless you're willing to spend the cash. And this is where we have the shop, and they're always flashing these, bundles in your face. And so, if you find yourself stuck in the Space Marine campaign, you want to play Chaos instead, well, unfortunately, you'll have to wait a long time, unless you just purchase that bundle right there, and then you can start playing immediately. You got that instant gratification there. So that's something, of course, that is common among mobile games these days, where you can spend some cash to immediately get some progress. But of course, as is true with a lot of games these days, there is no end to the progress here. They'll keep releasing new content. There'll always be something new on the horizon, so it just never ends. No matter how much you advance in this game or how much you spend, there will always be more that you can spend. Now, if you really like the game, then that's great, but I think a lot of players will probably end up just spending a lot of time or money on this game just because they can. Now, I personally don't find a lot of these game modes all that exciting. I think, again, the core gameplay, the combat system is good, but it becomes very repetitive in a lot of these missions, which are just very easy, and it doesn't actually require much strategic thought. It's just sort of mindless, repetitive actions. And so I find that I'm not really playing the game because I enjoy the gameplay so much as I'm just playing it because the game is telling me that I need to do that in order to get the loot, which is what I think a lot of these game modes exist for. The best part of the game that I have enjoyed the most is the live PvP mode, which is not a permanent feature in the game as of now. I don't know if it's going to be like a weekly thing, usually just I think for 48-hour event where you can play against other players live. That actually was a lot of fun, and they did a really great job on that. So that is one aspect of the game that I approve of. But just the way that they've done the whole upgrade system, the character progression, and unlocking the characters, I'm not a fan of that. It's just a little too much busy work, is what it feels like. Just, you know, you have to just spend all of this time and energy and brain power on figuring out how to upgrade your characters. And I was just thinking, you know, people who are fans of 40k, you're familiar with like Dawn of War, right? So imagine if Dawn of War were in the style of this game for a second. Like, imagine you're playing through the campaign, like let's say Space Marines against Necrons, and for the first few missions, you know, you're just blasting through the Necrons because that's what Space Marines do, right? And you're just having a great time. But then after a few missions, you suddenly find yourself up against Necrons that are suddenly, they have 10 times as much health, 10 times as much power. They're just one-shotting your elite soldiers instantly. Now, does that make any sense? Does that make any logical sense in the world of Warhammer? Like, where you have a legendary character like Tacticus, and he's getting killed in one hit by a scarab swarm, of all things? Like, it just does not sit right with me. Right? But that's what's happening in this game. Now let's take it a step further. Imagine you're playing through this Dawn of War campaign, you find yourself against impossibly powerful Necrons, and then the only way that you can beat that mission is then to leave the campaign, and then go and do a bunch of random side quests, so that you can get some items to upgrade your Space Marines outside of the battle, and then you can go back into the campaign, and then beat the mission. And that's essentially what they've done in this game. That is how the campaign here works, and the progression system. So, I mean, it's not surprising for a mobile game, but just kind of disappointing. Now, there are a lot of other things I could talk about, like the visual design. I think for a mobile game, it's pretty good, especially here where you can see the characters. They do look pretty nice. The in-game graphics are not quite as amazing, you know, for the gritty universe of 40k. It's pretty cartoony looking, but it works. The dialogue in the campaign is the comic relief of the game, I think. It's actually pretty hilarious. The Space Marines are just always talking about, you know, we need to purge these Xenos from the world, and then the Battle Sister, she's always like, oh, I'm so angry, and then the Necrons are just like taunting them the whole time. It's pretty funny. The voice acting, there's not really any actual voice acting, except when the characters do their like attack in the game, and those voices are a little bit ridiculous sounding. My personal opinion there, but you know, what can you do? As for the user interface, I mean, you can just see by looking at this, there's so much going on here. It's very busy, lots of text. It looks like it was designed like a decade ago. So it's just a little bit too much of everything for my liking. But I don't know. Maybe some people like this. You know, it also seems kind of like they've drawn a lot of ideas. They've taken a lot of ideas from other mobile games and just added it to this. So essentially, I mean, this is really not much different than other mobile games these days. I think some of the initial reviews of this game are like, oh, this is like the best 40k game ever to be released on a mobile device, and like, oh, they're doing all this like really cool new stuff, but I mean, it's not really new. It's just old stuff repackaged into a shiny new product, and we have yet another 40k turn-based combat game. But those are my thoughts about this game at the moment. I mean, I'm still playing it because I am just kind of getting suckered into just playing every day because that's what the game is telling me to do. But yeah, let me know what you think about this game. If you have decided to stick with it, if you think you're going to be in it for the long run, or if you found that this was just not your type of game and you decide to call it quits. Let me know in the comments. But that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.